Good morning. It's 9 o'clock on Friday, the 8th of January. This is Nigel Farage bringing you the first phone Farage of 2016. This is your chance to put any questions you like to me, and I'll do my very best to answer. So, to get things moving, you can call us on 0345 60 60 973. And don't forget, you can also watch Phone Farage on the website lbc.co.uk. And without further ado, we will go to our first caller, who is Paul in Woodford. Good morning.
Morning, Nigel.
Hi.
I'd like to ask you, there's been a massive influx of migrant men to Europe, and there seems to be a left-wing agenda to cover up when there's sex attacks, rapes, like in Germany on New Year's Eve. I'd like to know what you think. Do you think people should be told? Because I think the women need to be warned that it needs to be out there.
Well, Paul, I mean, you're absolutely right that most people that have been coming to Europe over the course of the last 18 months have indeed been young males between the ages of 18 and 30. And if you go to the jungle in Calais, which I recently did, and you'll see, I would think at least 80% are young males in that particular category. Some of us have been warning that if you allow unlimited numbers of people into countries who come from different cultures, who have a different perspective, shall we say, of the role of women in society, that you are storing up problems. Now, what we saw, Paul, of course, were these extraordinary scenes outside the train stations in Germany on New Year's Eve. Firstly, of course, there was Munich, the very Hauptbahnhof where people stood holding big signs saying refugees welcome just 5 or 6 months ago. And the two main stations in Munich were closed because there was the threat of a terrorist attack coming from Iraqi and Syrian sources. But further north in Germany, in Cologne, some incidents happened there which the German state broadcaster and the German police deliberately covered up. Of that there is no doubt. And that is that 1,000 plus young migrant men were effectively, assaulting, groping, and worse, any young woman, any female that they could possibly come into contact with. Yes, it was, Paul, covered up. We've now got the story, but I have to say the biggest shock to me was the mayor of Cologne, an independent lady, gave a press briefing in which she said that she wanted to introduce a new code of conduct for German women. Not for the people carrying out the assaults, but for German women. That they should make sure they don't sort of go within, a metre of...
Arm's length was her words.
Yeah. Well,
arm's length of a stranger.
Be a yard, really, wouldn't it? But anyway, and I just thought, what an incredible insult to all those women who must have been very, very scared. But I'm quite surprised, actually, Paul, that she didn't suggest that in future they just stay at home. And perhaps when they come out, wear a headscarf or something like that. I mean, no, but this is an absolute abject surrender of the whole cultural identity of modern-day Germany. I mean, there's often an argument...
Why the news blackout, do you suppose, Mr. Farage?
Well, let me tell you that it's actually far worse, perhaps, than Paul even thinks. In Sweden, Malmö has now become the rape capital of Europe. Fact. However, there has been a change in the law. A change in the law in Sweden. It is now illegal for the Swedish newspapers or the Swedish radio stations or television stations to give the identities of those who commit any crime. And this has been done.
The identities or the ethnicities?
Ethnicities.
Yeah. So you can say it's Nick Ferrari, but you can't say that Nick Ferrari is from Switzerland or whatever.
You certainly would not be allowed under the current Swedish law to say that recent migrants, refugees, whatever it is, had committed these crimes. And that is because the Swedish authorities are, terrified of Swedish people realising the breakdown of law and order that has taken place in Malmö. So, Paul talked in his question about a cover-up, and it's pretty damn serious. And Paul, could I just add lastly, very quickly, that our own state broadcaster, for which we all pay quite a big tax every year, called the licence fee, indeed, when the news at 10 covered the story of the attacks at Cologne, I watched it and thought, crikey, have the Germans suddenly gone crackers? Has Germany just gone mad?
All on the beer.
Yeah, but actually, because the Germans can take their beer rather better in many cases than we can in this country. So, Paul, there is a major problem, and it is being covered up. Is that what you were expecting me to say, or not?
Nigel, I just wish we had more politicians like you that was brave enough to tell the truth.
Thank you for that. Can I just, on this point, Nigel Farage, get your view on this? A professor at Texas A&M University, Valerie Hudson, is drawing a link between the influx of young males, particularly who have no jobs, and to use her words, will fuel a rise in sex crimes.
Do you know, I have worked as an MEP in Brussels, Nick, now for, crikey, nearly 17 years. I can't believe it. I was young once. Can I just say there are sections of Brussels now that for a young woman effectively are no-go zones. I mean, my sort of PA in Brussels, and she's worked with me since 2001, she was recently walking through a district in Brussels when 2 or 3 people shouted at her, "Bitch, cover up." So saying that she should cover up, wear a headscarf or a niqab or whatever it is. And I'm afraid you see that. And I've also seen myself just sort of walking past the Bourse, downtown Brussels at night, women just accosted again and again and again and again. And that's become a feature of life in Brussels. And I was listening to you before the news, with the last caller. What do we do about this? Well, we're going to have to be very, very tough in terms of law and order and standing up for what we consider to be the correct values.
But you'll be aware there's a heck of a row going on in Germany at the moment, Mr Farage. It doesn't appear that unless, even if they're convicted, they can't be deported, some of these people.
I know they can't. And so, well, I mean, what this shows you, is interesting, wasn't it? One of the police reports that came out later was that the people were saying, but Angela Merkel invited us.
Yes.
Do you know what she did? I think she's made the biggest post-war policy error of any European country. Over 1 million people have settled in Germany last year, and while some of them, yes, would have been refugees fleeing in fear of their lives, too many are young males who are coming as economic migrants who don't even appear to be grateful for people giving them a new place to live. There is a major problem. We move on to the next call, and it is Ranjit in Birmingham.
Hello, Nigel.
Good morning.
I was just thinking, given the negative image created of you by the likes of Channel 4 News, The Guardian, and a certain radio show presenter.
Now, does he start at 10 o'clock most mornings?
we move to the question, Ranjit, yes.
Yeah. Are you not worried that if you lead the Leave campaign or are too prominent in the Leave campaign, you will put off more undecided than you will convince?
Well, and this comes, just to remind you and all Ranjit and all the listeners, in an exclusive LBC poll of Londoners, 41% said they want to see you, Nigel Farage, lead that campaign. In second place, and a long way back with 23%, was Boris Johnson. So you would appear in London to be the chosen man, Nigel Farage?
Yeah, well, that was very flattering this morning. But Ranjit's question is, what's interesting, Ranjit, is, and I've actually got some private polling we did over the course of the summer, which we've done nothing with, but I will, in the light of the LBC poll this morning and Ranjit's question, we'll give all that to Theo Usherwood today, your political correspondent for the channel.
Just give me a top line of what it will show.
The top line is that Ranjit's right, that people have been persuaded by some sections of the media to think terrible things about me. But the only people, Ranjit, that have been convinced by it are those who would never vote for me or what I stand for in a month of Sundays. So when they read that stuff, it sort of confirms their view. What is really interesting is that amongst the undecideds in terms of this referendum, what it shows is there are 3 or 4 figures that potentially could sway the referendum in favour of us leaving. And Ranjit, I'm one of those figures. And interestingly, Boris Johnson and Theresa May are the other 2. So no, Ranjit, actually, in terms of reaching out and persuading Conservative or Labour voters that actually this referendum is a chance to vote no, I can be a positive, not a negative, with those undecided voters, but with those who believe in open borders and believe in the European project, they really tend to hate me more with each day that goes by.
So the question is, will you lead the campaign, Mr Farage?
I've no idea what shape the campaign will take, but let's put it like this. If I was the only well-known political figure leading the campaign, I think we'd probably lose. We need other people because we've all got different audiences. You yourself, Nick Ferrari, have an audience that like Nick Ferrari and perhaps, wouldn't listen to the show if somebody else was presenting it, and vice versa. Some people, who don't like your style. What that LBC poll this morning says to me is that when Theresa May got up at the Tory party conference and said we must take back control of our borders, by implication what she meant is we can't do that as members of the European Union. And if Theresa May comes on board and Boris comes on board and a few other figures come on board, then this referendum is winnable. And do I see myself leading it? I see myself as part of a team. And I think what happened yesterday was very significant.
Boris?
Of course. I mean, I'm not sure what Boris stands for, but, perhaps we'll find out over the course of the next few weeks. Great fun, though he is. But what happened yesterday, I think, said to me there is a big change taking place. I had an article in the Daily Telegraph yesterday that was under my byline, under Kate Hoey, the Labour MP for Vauxhall, and Tom Pursglove, 27 years old, the youngest Tory MP in the country. And we've launched this new initiative this week. It's Peter Bone, a Tory MP, has really got this going, and he's the leader of it. It's called Go, Grassroots Out. And for the first time in my lifetime, we're genuinely seeing people from across the political spectrum working together and saying that whilst we want to be friends with Europe and we want to trade with Europe, we've got to take back control of our own lives.
And just lastly on this, I read a piece over the holiday period that suggests that the voting currently in Britain is around 33% out, 33% in and 33% to play for. Does that accord with where you think we are?
Bang on.
Oh, really?
Absolutely bang on. Oh, no, a third of people think it's great. A third of people
loathe it,
hate it in a most extraordinary way. And of the third who haven't made their minds up, they're more inclined to be sceptical about it than to be in favour of it. They just need to be convinced in a referendum that actually the safe, sensible thing to do is to say we shouldn't be part of this failing club. We go on to our third call of the morning, and that is Alison in Crawley. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. I just wanted to ask, your recent car accident in France, which must have been horribly shocking, and not the first transport-related near-death experience.
Remind me never to get on a train with it. Go on, Alison.
I advise you walk, but anyway, two quick questions related to that. Why did you think it was an assassination attempt on you? And if you did, why on earth do you not want the French police to investigate? Because it seems the reporting subsequently, the wheels appear to have come off not just your car, but the idea that it was an assassination attempt.
Right, okay. Well, Alison, thank you. Walking, yes, I was walking on the 25th of November 1985 over a Pelican crossing when a car hit me and broke my leg in 6 places. So I'm not even safe walking. I shouldn't be allowed out, really, Alison, should I? All right, okay. I received a phone call from the Mail on Sunday saying, we've heard a story that you were involved in an accident on a French motorway and that somebody had tampered with your car. And I made a terrible, terrible mistake. I should just have said no comment and put the phone down. I took the view that as they were going to run it anyway, we'd try and get it factually right. So I did give a few bits and bobs of information that it appeared to have been tampered with. That then turns in a Sunday newspaper into an assassination attempt. I never said anything of the kind, Alison. And now there's speculation as to what the police did say or didn't say. My view was whether it was deliberately tampered with or not. What happened, and I just want to get on with my life. This happened months ago, Alison. I thought I'd told almost nobody about it. Somebody obviously, for their own advantage, had given this to a Sunday newspaper. I'd rather the story hadn't appeared, and frankly...
do you believe someone did tamper with the wheel nuts of your car?
I don't know.
And did the mechanics say that someone had tampered with them?
Well, the police thought that they probably had, but, look, whatever happened...
The mechanics saying that they'd just been put on incorrectly or something,
well, there we are. So, as I say, you get caught up in a story like this, it can go on forever. It happened months ago.
But the police were the ones who told you they thought that someone had tampered with your car, the wheel nuts of your car.
That's how it looked to them. That's how it looked to them. If the French-speaking mechanic took a different view, I don't know. But, as I say, next time I get a phone call from a newspaper asking me a question about anything that's personal or linked to my security, I will not give an answer. I've learnt a big lesson from this.
And lastly, what do you think happened? It was a human error from the last mechanic who was at your car. You do think someone tampered with it? You must in the back of your mind.
I've no idea.
But would you get worried when you get in your car now?
No.
No,
I've survived worse than that. OK, moving on to Hilary in Kensington. Hilary, good morning.
Oh, good morning. Do you agree with David Cameron that the police should be armed in London or wherever now because of the situation we're all in?
Well, this is as a result. While you think, Nigel, Nigel Farage, let me just play you. This was some LBC research about the fact the high number of Londoners, 66%, fear there may be some Paris-style attack on London within the next 12 months. And they put this to David Cameron. This was his response to Theo Ushwood.
I've discussed this directly with Bernard, who I think is doing an excellent job. We do need to have more firearms officers on the streets of London. There's already a plan to increase the number of arms response vehicles, and I'll continue to discuss with him and the Home Secretary how we can make sure that happens. I think that's important in London and also across the country.
And of course, that's Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe, Metropolitan Police Commissioner. Nigel Farage.
I'm very surprised that only 66% of Londoners are concerned. I'm very surprised. It strikes me that a third are being really pretty complacent about what is, I would have thought, fairly obviously potentially a dangerous
Do you think
situation.
there could be an attack? You would be a yes if we'd asked you.
Of course, yes. And as I say, I'm surprised the figure's that low. But anyway, look.
To Hillary's question about more guns with officers.
Hillary, I think David Cameron gave a bit of a non-answer there. Look, I am concerned, Hillary, that we have in London and across the country too few trained armed police officers, and it was very interesting. I was in this studio on Sunday with Chris Phillips, a former Met terrorism expert, who made the point that every single police officer with firearms training was on duty on New Year's Eve. So what happened the next night or the night after that? So there is a real. So Hillary, my answer to you is simple: yes, we need more people. Police officers who are trained to use firearms. But do I want to see the British Bobby routinely carrying a gun of some kind? No, I don't, actually. And I'll tell you why, Hillary. Because if people committing burglaries know that police who are hot on their heels are going to be armed, they will be armed as well. And what that does, it kind of spikes a bit of a gun war. And I just look at America, where everybody carries guns. I look at the sheer rate of gun crime, and I don't want us to become like that. Hillary, you obviously feel concerned about this.
Yes, very much so. I absolutely agree with you 100%. But then they should make the ability to get a license for a gun much, much harder, surely. Because in a way, when you see armed police like you do in Europe, it gives you a lot of confidence.
Yeah, I mean, gun licensing is a slightly separate issue. All I would say is I think we've got the toughest gun licensing laws in the whole of Europe. In fact, in a way, perhaps in the whole of the world. And however tightly you license guns, when Tony Blair banned handguns in the wake of Dunblane, we actually saw a rise in the number of handguns being traded on the black market. So, licensing, I'm fully in favour, Hillary, of licensing. But
you wouldn't relax gun laws?
Well, I think right at this moment in time, to argue we should relax gun laws would be crazy. Although I have to confess, concerned that the European Union's next directive on gun laws says we may even have to surrender our antique guns, even those that are decommissioned. So I think a little bit of common sense is what we need on this. But Hillary, thank you very much for your concern, and I'm sure there are many that feel like that. We move to Herbie and Harrow. Herbie, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Good morning, Nick.
Hello, sir.
The flooding up up north now, which is getting worse by the day, by the sound of it, and the amount of money going from us to overseas to help their defences. I was in Cumbria a week before Christmas. I'm sure you may be aware of that, Nick. And I saw them poor souls up there. We seem to be doing very little. Yet I've got an offer to have storage facilities for them, which is very difficult to get the message out there. I sent an email to David Cameron yesterday asking for a meeting so I can put this proposal forward, and I will ask any political party to contact me to show you what...
So what is your direct question to Mr Farage then, Herbie?
Well, what is it? Do you think that we should be sending money to overseas, or should we be sending it up north to help these poor souls?
Right, the international aid budget. Nigel Farage.
I think there are 2 points here, Herbie, actually. One is the international aid budget, where, of course, we're now giving over £1 billion a month to, which is pretty enormous. But there's another point, Herbie, and I'm sure you're going to be really pleased by this answer. As part of our European Union contributions, you can know that last year tens of millions of pounds of British taxpayers' money was spent on flood prevention. Isn't that great? It's just that it was spent in Poland and right across southern and eastern Europe. And so, Herbie, look, I think, we are, let's be honest about ourselves, we are, in terms of charitable donation and giving, the most generous country in the world. We are happy to support disaster relief. We're happy to support overseas charities if we think they're doing a good job. I think what angers us is that we get a feeling that our government doesn't put our own people first as a priority and is happy to be shelling out all this money in European contributions and foreign aid when clearly more money could have been spent in the north of England. I would also add, Herbie, if I can, before Nick cuts me off, that one of the reasons the flooding has been so bad, and I was involved with Somerset last year, I visited several times, is that the traditional method of dealing with these rivers over centuries has been dredging. So you dredge the rivers, and in many cases you use the silt that comes out to reinforce the banks of the rivers. Under European Union rules, you can no longer do that.
Why can't we dredge? What's the problem with dredging?
Firstly, the Habitats Directive makes it difficult to apply for licences to dredge. Secondly, when you've got the dredge material, that now counts as hazardous waste.
What, silt? And
Yes, of course. We have to be careful and sensible and safe with everything in the European Union, so you can't use that material to build up the banks, and it costs a fortune to get rid of it. And there is no doubt that once again our impotence in the face of EU law has made a problem that would have happened anyway slightly worse.
Let's do some email questions. Susan in Poplar, in the light of the new guidelines on alcohol, is Nigel going to cut down or adhere to them?
Right, now, whilst the LBC poll cheered me up this morning, to turn on the news early this morning and to hear some appalling puritanical figure is now telling us that no level of drinking is safe. And I've had a quick look through the tables. I'm now 25% more likely to die than I thought I was last night when I went to bed, according to their figures. And I think what we ought to do is have a mass protest against this form of nannying. And we should all
go to lunch.
I think we should all go out at lunchtime and have a glass of something. I mean, look, we all know there is a big problem with excessive alcohol consumption in this country. There's a problem with the binge drinking mentality. Even intelligent youngsters go out on Friday nights with the intention of getting hammered. We know that. But frankly, if we choose to enjoy a few drinks, 4 or 5 nights a week after a hard day at work, whether it slightly shortens our lives or not, so what? Do what you enjoy. And I think, to basically tell us that any form of drinking is likely to lead to our deaths is just so over the top that we'll probably behave in the opposite way. I certainly will, starting at midday today.
Enjoy. Glass of red, I sense.
Right.
Rachel in Bexley, how does Nigel Farage react to the examination boards moving the timetables for the summer exams to fit in with the holy month of Ramadan?
Well, I mean, Sally, it's an extension, isn't it, of what we talked about at the top of the hour here. We talked about cover-ups. We talked about people being afraid to, defend the right of German girls to go around their towns late at night. Once again, we see abject surrender. The whole point is that if you become a migrant to a country, whilst you may have private observance of your own religion or your own traditions, you fit in with their way of life. And we shouldn't be changing our exams because a minority happen to have a religious festival. We've got to go the other direction. We've got to start being more assertive. Like it or don't like it, we come from a Judeo-Christian culture. That is who we are. It's part of our constitution, and we jolly well ought to defend it.
Go back to the calls if we can, Mr. Farage.
We will. We're going to Graham in High Wycombe. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Nigel. I'm for coming out of the EU.
Good chap, yeah.
If we leave the EU, would the French discontinue our border force in Calais, their own Eurostar? Would they lay on special Eurostar trains to St Pancras for the immigrants, giving them complimentary tickets?
Well, they're already doing that in a way, Graham, by turning a blind eye to what's been going on at the jungle in Calais. And now, for the first time in, I think, 16 years, after the Sangatte debacle, they're now opening an official French camp just further up the road at Dunkirk. I sense, Graham, that as the debate towards this referendum hots up, and I personally think this referendum will be in June, so we haven't got too long to go. I think the whole question of border security and border controls and safety will become one of the key issues. At the moment, as you say, we have some border controls in Calais. If you're coming, by Eurostar, if you're coming with your car through the Channel, the argument is, not being part of the European Union, our borders would come back to Dover. Whether they come back to Dover or not, this is not about where your borders are. It's about whether you've got the power to enforce those borders. And when I saw, Graham, that the Sudanese fella, albeit very enterprising, he walked 31 miles through the Channel Tunnel, dodging trains and death and goodness knows what. So in some ways, almost a bit of a grudging admiration for his balls for doing it. But perfectly clear, he was an illegal immigrant to Folkestone, and yet we've decided it's absolutely fine and dandy that he can stay in our country. And that sends the wrong message.
What should we have done with that particular individual?
Sent him back to where he came from, quite simple. So, Graham, the answer is, whether our border controls would move back to Dover or not, that isn't really the point. We would no longer be subject to the free movement rules for 500 million people within the European Union, but we're going to have to take, whether we stay inside the European Union or not, we've got to take a more robust attitude towards illegal immigration, because the fact is that even if you're detected in Britain as an illegal immigrant, your chances then of being sent back anywhere are less than 1 in 4.
Text from Kenneth in Dartford. Jeremy Corbyn's attempt to reshuffle his cabinet shows him to be absolutely out of control. How could he possibly attempt to be a Prime Minister? He'd have to take decisions on a regular basis. Does Nigel Farage agree?
I just think Corbyn's great. I love him. I think, firstly, he says he doesn't think the police should shoot to kill terrorists in the street. Then he puts Ken Livingstone, I like Ken, but he puts Ken Livingstone in charge of a defence review, and Ken wants to get rid of all our independent nuclear deterrent, and is saying that in the very week when the North Koreans have let off a hydrogen bomb. And then he puts Emily Thornberry in as the Shadow Defence Secretary, a woman who hates the English flag, is a unilateralist. Do you know something? The Labour Party, I'm old enough to remember, 30 years ago, destroyed their public image because people did not feel the country would be safe in their hands, and they're heading back in the same direction. And I say it's great because I think a lot of those old Labour patriotic voters are going to think about voting for my party in the future.
Can I get one more in?
A bit selfish, perhaps. Sorry about that. We go to Peter in Notting Hill. Peter, hello.
Yeah, hello, Nigel. Hello, Nick.
Hello.
I wanted to ask to what extent Nigel is concerned that large proportions of the refugees and migrants that arrived in Germany in 2015, which is sort of 1 million plus, and probably many more family members on their way, and probably more again in 2016, will move to the UK when they get their EU passports. And the reason I ask is because there was a Guardian article done 24 months ago. It was written by a journalist who was also working for BBC Radio 4, and they did some research by the sort of left-wing think tank Migration Observatory, and they found out that large numbers of EU migrants coming to live in the UK weren't born in the UK. And when they looked into it further, one of the statements they made in the article was half of the entire Dutch Somali community has moved to the UK.
Well, you raise a very, very important point. Those scenes, those pictures we've seen from Cologne of those aggressive young males behaving as badly as they were on New Year's Eve, who've been welcomed in this year by Angela Merkel, they will all, if they wish, be coming to Britain in a few short years, because after a period of about 3 years, maybe 4, they will be able to get German passports. And a German passport is an EU passport, which is a British passport. So when in this referendum campaign, the Prime Minister and others reassure you, it's okay, we're not part of Schengen, people can't automatically come here if they've got non-EU passports. Remember, as soon as they have got EU passports, they will be able to come. And there's one thing we have to say. There are lots of people who've come to Britain from Europe, from France and Germany and Poland, who are fantastic people, who work blooming hard and pay their taxes and obey the law and integrate in society. The problem is we simply cannot cope with the sheer numbers of people that are coming to Britain. Just this week we've seen there is a GP crisis in Britain. Well, is it any wonder? Our population is rising by 500,000 a year. We've got a chronic shortage of primary school places in London and many other parts of the country, and we need to build a new house every 7 minutes in this country just to cope with current levels of immigration. So the point is, that freed from the European Union, we will be able to choose who comes to live, work and settle in this country. And frankly, I don't want that lot from Cologne, having behaved the way they did, to be able to come here in 3 or 4 years' time.
We finished, Nigel Farage, with 1 point or one question, much as we started, which was that poll that showed you with 41%. What about the idea, Nigel Farage, of the holy triumvirate of you, Boris Johnson and Theresa May in the Brexit campaign?
No, we need some people from the centre-left as well. It's very, very important. You know, I know there are lots and lots of Conservative voters listening to this show who are very Eurosceptic and who want to vote to leave or may be persuaded to vote to leave. And indeed, if Theresa and Boris come on board, that will help persuade them and get them over the line. But we must not think of Euroscepticism as being a Conservative centre-right agenda. Indeed, in the referendum 40 years ago, it was many on the left. It was the Tony Benns and the Michael Foots and people like that who believed in parliamentary democracy in this country. They believed it's what we'd fought 2 world wars for, and they were there to defend it. So, yes, I want those people. I want Boris and Theresa to be on board, but we need trade union leaders. We need people from across every walk of life. And if we get that, rather than obsessing with the individual that's the leader, if we have a team of people across the worlds of politics, sport, business, media, we can win this referendum, and it's going to be the biggest political decision we take in our lifetimes. And if we do it, we won't just free this country from the European Union. I think we'll free the rest of Europe from this current failing structure in Brussels too.
Thanks for coming on board. Happy New Year to you and your family, Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Nick.
The cable car. The cable car is the only piece of transport infrastructure in this city that actually covers both its capital and its revenue costs. Right. Last year, the cable car actually heaped up an operating profit of £1 million. It is insane.